let's talk a little bit about your profession. I'm sure you wish it was something in music sometimes, but I would love to hear. I think one of the most fascinating golf course stories in the last 5 to 10 years was you guys finding this Raynor plan
Yeah.
out of nowhere.
Yep.
Could you just tell us the story of finding this plan, how it happened, where you were in your restoration plan?
Yeah. Yeah, it's obviously it was a blast to kind of make a splash in the golf market for the true architecture enthusiasts. Little Midland Hills made some headlines, which was which was a blast. It was a blast for our membership. It was also a blast for the process because at the time we had already approved a master plan with Jim Rubina, who we'd been working with for several years, and he had seen enough Raynor to know, looking at our aerials, that we were Raynor, but we, just like a lot of clubs, we didn't have proof, right? We never had a drawing of any kind. Our first area was 1937. We knew from our club minutes, we actually have club minutes all the way back to 1919, which is awesome. They're all cataloged in books, hand typewritten. They're sweet. So we knew the background, but we didn't have the proof. So I would say it was like 2016 we engaged with Jim and started working on the master plan. Took a nice slow route to kind of set objectives and budgets. And during that process, probably this time of year in 2018, I was super bored in my office. And I have a closet, and I have this ceiling tile that was in there crooked. And for like a decade, I looked at this.
You just ignored the crooked ceiling tile.
Yeah. So
just like the creaky door at your house.
Super creaky. Yeah. So anyway, winters are long here. They can be. And I was like, I'm going to just fix this. I'm finally going to fix it. So I take my chair and I put it in my closet. And before I put the ceiling tile back, I'm like, I wonder what's up here. So I start snooping around up above the ceiling, and sure enough, I find this rolled up piece of paper. And my assistant was at his desk. And I said, Mark, you got to come look at this. I rolled it out on the carpet. And I mean, it was like finding buried treasure, right? The first thing I looked at was the stamp on it, which was 1921. And it's not a Raynor. Well, we don't know if Raynor drew it, but it's a Crane and Ordway. Crane and Ordway was an irrigation well company from St. Paul. We think what it is it's drawn over some type of drawing or blueprint from Raynor. So after that came out, kind of talked to leadership at the club and said, hey, this doesn't change things, but this changes things. It changes everything. And a lot of assumptions that Jim had made, that I had made, that a lot of our long tenured members had made about certain holes and what was lost, were kind of there on paper all of a sudden.
Was that the first thing you found when you went up there?
That was the only thing that was up there.
Only thing that was up there.
It was the only thing that was up there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that one, my follow-up question was exactly what you just hit on.
Yeah.
I feel like there are so many clubs that don't have a plan. And what we, end up having is architects that have a deep understanding of architects, of old architects like Jim has of Seth Raynor, like Tom Doak has of an architect, like Gil Hance has done in so many places, end up putting back what they think was there.
Yes.
How did your plan that was all assumption based, like what are a couple examples of it changing once the plan was there? were there any general themes that that were really different?
Well, I think the main one that solidified the assumption was is that Raynor didn't use a lot of fairway bunkers here because he used the topography as the hazard. There was tons of blind shots out here because the corridors were so huge.
I think for people that I'm going to assume that the vast majority of people listening to this have never visited your property, but I
Correct.
would say that it was one of the revelations of my year last year was how stunning. I mean, how stunning of a property Midland Hills sits on.
Hmm.
The back nine is extraordinary land for golf, like perfectly scaled contours, like that choppy, rolling, irregular hills, um, which leads to amazing fairway contours, amazing fairway natural hazards, and then tremendous green sites. And the front nine's got a little bit more severe. It's a little bit different shaped, but that's also it's a very dramatic front nine. But the
Yeah.
back nine, I would say, is just it's out of this world for golf. It's one of the least talked about really good golf courses in America.
Yeah, I think. Well, I appreciate that. And you know, as a superintendent, you always, from an architectural standpoint, you think about the potential of the property to take care of. And when I started here in 2010, it was covered in trees. And 2,000 trees later that have been taken out, we now have that gift to re-gift to the membership and reinforce what this golf course was all about and was the land. So some other things that maybe the plan solidified from assumption wise is, for example, the road hole. We knew there was fairway bunkers on the outside of the dog leg, and one of our shapers, Zach Vardy, was Jim is like, I'm pretty sure this bunker was here, but there was no landform to find anything. And sure enough, Zach started excavating and found the original bunker sand. So that happened many times throughout the project where Jim had said, I think there was a bunker here. I think the bunker extended to this point. And, the soils don't lie. If you dig down, you'll find history. You'll find the history if you dig. And so those things happened several times throughout the project, and they were a blast. I mean, we had to take moments to just call everybody over to see what we found because it's just so fun. Irrigation cisterns that were buried next to greens that we had found, those are over 100 years old and they were basically intact. Um, yeah, a lot of that stuff that happened just kind of built to the story that was kind of our story. It's, like you said, most of your listeners have never probably even heard of Midland Hills, but it's been a blast.
You guys did a full shutdown for the renovation. How did you guys go about selling the membership over that? You talked about it being a long-term kind of sell.
Yeah.
How was that process conveyed, and what were the big moments that got you over the hump to get the work done?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost thing that Jim preached to the membership was we want to make this golf course as fun as possible, and that's for everybody. Wasn't to make it harder, it wasn't to make it easier, it was to make it as fun as possible to play. Um, with that being said, I think the campaigning that took place was to, if you have 300 members, it's hard to get them all together in one room. They all have different objectives. They all have different personal wants. They all want to hold on to something that currently they have in the golf course that they think is going to change. Um, Golf is an emotional sport, especially when you're very intimate with a property you've been at for a long time. You have a certain level of ownership, and change is hard. So we had to talk through all those things. I think one of the successful things we did is we broke out into kind of assigning members to talk to certain demographic parts of our membership to explain to them, look, we're not stretching out every hole. This isn't to chase the scorecard. So we did a really good job of trying to group everybody into abilities, age, skill level, enjoyment, and really talk about how we're going to make it a funner golf course. It wasn't just about architecture. That came with restoring that architecture came with making it fun for everybody. Angles, with the ability just to putt the ball from 60 yards out. All those things we couldn't do before. It was a slow process, but for us, we weren't in a rush. We were fortunate not to be in a rush, so we didn't have to do it out of necessity. But it felt like the process stalled at some point. It never did stall. It just was. There was moments where you got frustrated with not feeling like you were making momentum. But the culture of this club was one that we hired an architect who we had a ton of trust in. He built that relationship over time, and he wanted to make sure that after the project was over, he wasn't just packing up his circus and leaving town. He wanted to continue the relationship for the long term and to continue to evaluate the work that we did and going forward with tweaks. So it was I think every restoration renovation has its cultural fit. Ours was to embrace the architecture, which was Seth Raynor, which would obviously make our property more attractable in a competitive market, but it was to really have our end users just have a better experience. And that's kind of how it's turned out so far.
How would you say with Raynor, he's obviously become a bit of a cult hero in golf architecture over the last 10 to 15 years. How have you seen it at the local level? Probably, I don't want to mischaracterize Midland Hills, but I imagine 10 years ago, nobody talked about Midland Hills being this Raynor golf course. How have you noticed at the course level the perception and the stature of your golf course change because of just the association with Seth Raynor?
Yeah, that
And did
wasn't
and
really.
did that help with the selling of the restoration?
It didn't. I would say it didn't help with the sell. It was kind of an unspoken thing that a couple of us at the club knew or hoped that was going to happen. Um, because again, our membership isn't really concerned about accolades or recognition. It's a pretty quiet, sleepy place. But it we all there was a small group of us that knew what the potential was, and probably looking at other examples of clubs that have gone through this, what would happen on the other side. Um, on a local level, I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes to a few things. We did our project kind of in an untraditional sense. From we didn't spend a massive amount of money doing it. We implemented our own staff into the construction phase, which saved us a ton of money, and it increased our quality control. But it also we have we have people that are at other clubs in town that want to come see us to experience it, that had zero interest in before. So it was kind of reaffirmation from telling kind of the naysayers that, hey, if we do this, it's going to improve your enjoyment of the golf course, but it's also going to shed a spotlight of how cool this place really is.